Namo Buddhaya, everyone. Good evening to you all. Nice to see you all again this week. Welcome back, all my friends. So we'll get started now. For those who do not know me, my name is Tina. I'm delighted to welcome you all to our Mindfulness Through Buddhism class tonight. Um, Bante Amita Kema will not be joining us today, but we do have another Bante Kalyana Jyoti from California will be joining us and conducting the session with us tonight. Bante will lead us through the great teachings of the Buddha and meditation this evening. We're grateful, Bante, for your joining us tonight. Thank you so much for your time and stepping in absence of Bante Kema. Before Bante begins, I do ask everyone to take a moment to stay present, sit comfortably, and think of one part of the session you would like to take away today and practice in your daily life. I know last week Bante Kema taught us about anger, and for myself, it resonated with me a bit, and I applied that to some of my relationship that I have interact with people, and I found that it was very helpful. So that's just one bit of tip that I have for everyone. Now I'm going to ask my friend Anne. Anne is going to give us a recap of the last week teachings, which is related to the topic anger.
Thank you, Tina.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for the opportunity, everyone. So as Tina mentioned, this is a review on nothing good comes from anger. And it started with Bhante Kema asking the question, and multiple people replied as to whether any good ever comes from anger. And there were mentions of noticing when it arises, but that they'll notice also when the anger dissipates. We discuss sensations in the body, awareness, energy, and wisdom. But the bottom line was no, nothing good comes from anger. Not helpful. We discussed whether it does create awareness. It is normal, but do not hold anger. Some people say when anger arises, they remember to implement boundaries. It gives energy to fight the injustices. After learning the sutta, let's find ways to combat injustices and remember boundaries without the anger. Then I have the sutta, which was at Jetta's Grove, and Bhante talked about a monk criticizing the nuns, and then a person criticizing the nuns, and then the monk Molia Faguna, it made him angry. He had a relationship and he was attached to the nuns, and he didn't like when people criticized them. Then we went over the Kakapama Sutta. So everyone is angry due to criticism. Buddha asks, and he reminds that you've come from a household life to monastic life. If anyone criticizes the nuns in his presence, he should give up attachment and train his mind. He should train so his mind remains unaffected. He should not speak bad words. He should remain full of compassion. He should have a heart of loving kindness. He should have no inner hate. He then should spread loving kindness to everyone, not only that person. Train yourself to be unaffected. Work with the senses. The words are only sounds coming from the ear, and then our mind gives it meaning. Remain unaffected. I've meant to count how many times Bhante repeated that during our session last week. Do not speak bad words. Compassionate towards the person. Never hold it against someone when they're angry. Where is the complaining and the criticizing and the anger coming from? And that's what you have to ask yourself when someone is in a state of anger. Does he feel hurt because of something? because of something he got mad and now he's speaking like this. Understand what is going on and have compassion. Keep the heart of loving kindness, have no hate. Then spread loving kindness. Buddha says, even if it becomes physical, a physical assault, we should not hit back. Remain unaffected, no bad words, continue loving kindness, inner peace, help myself to not get mad, unaffected, no bad words, remain compassionate. Without further ado, others can physically, but they can't mentally hurt you. This is why you should not create anger within ourselves. Someone hit us 10 years ago. Do you still feel the pain physically? No. Do you have the same cells in your face now? Which we all know that's a no. So how can it hurt you over and over again? Only if you hold it in your mind. Every reminder of what happened is a slap. Person slaps one time, untrained mind slaps you over and over again throughout your life. It creates anger, pain, and frustration. We should not let others create anger in ourselves. Now, here's another story. There was a loving, kind lady, and she was physically pretty. And the servant wondered if the lady was really as kind as she presented herself. So the servant wanted to test her kindness. So the servant woke up late and did not attend to the kind lady, her employer. And the kind lady felt annoyed but did not show it. And she asked the servant, what had happened. And the servant, we call it, kind of blew her off. Oh, I just slept in. Nothing's wrong. She felt the anger because she had not, the kind lady had always presented to be a kind person. She felt the anger because she had not trained her mind as the Buddha taught. So this goes on day 2, the same thing. Day 3, the same thing. And finally, on the 4th day, the kind lady hit the servant in the head. And the servant runs off through the streets with the bloody head. And Viveka's reputation as a kind lady was destroyed. Do not pretend good. The mind must be trained. 5 ways. Oh, these are PowerPoint slides. And 5 ways the speech arises. The Buddha lists the range the speech may arise: timing, truth, tone, benefit, and intention. And there was an example given of a human resource department. Maintain in peace and calmness. We are not allowed to create reasons to hold anger. That's good advice. People allow others to hurt them. And the second PowerPoint from Bhante's, he called his computer lazy. The Buddha asked us to maintain a mind like the earth. I am the earth. Someone is super angry. He is just a human. I am the whole earth. He is using a hoe to turn the earth. He cannot affect us. Turn yourself into the whole space. Turn yourself into the Ganges River. These examples mean we need to expand loving kindness quality. And then we talked about the cat skin bag and that it's soundless because it's soft. Can't create the sound of anger. If they cut you into pieces, the Buddha says, you still can't be angry. Lose mental pain. Unaffected, no bad word, spread love and compassion. And then he told us that if we had a stomach complaint, if we had diarrhea, we wouldn't reject the bathroom. It's not helpful to do that. Don't frame in anger. Don't hold anger. Don't judge anyone when they are angry. Person will regret it later. Anger is in the past, living in the past, losing the present, plan for the future. In state of anger through lenses of anger. And we discuss sibling rivalry and letting it go in the sutta. The main takeaway of the sutta is the simile of the soul. Learning is easy to do. We can all read or contemplate on the simile of the soul, but we must practice and we must learn to not resort to anger experientially. And then, as I mentioned, I think Sumana told us about a situation that had arisen for him, and it worked just as the teachings told us, that the person that was angry then came back and apologized and hugged him. And that's all I have. Thank you all.
Thank you, Anne. That was a nice recap, very detailed, and we appreciate you taking the time to, walk us through that sutta again. So thank you again. I know for me, with this teaching about anger, I'm sure we all come across people in our lives, our daily lives, where we encounter anger. I know for me, one part of this that resonated with me is that external pain is one thing, mental hatred is an additional suffering we create for ourselves. So we almost cling to, people are testing their boundaries with us, and sometimes we get angry. And I think Bante's teaching really wraps it up nicely, and some of the techniques that he showed and explained to us. So hopefully we can all learn from that. So now I'm going to pass it on to Bante Kalyana Jyoti. Namo Buddhaya, Bante. Welcome to our session. Thank you for joining and walking us through the teachings tonight.
Of course, thank you. So everybody put your hand together and say this with me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Bhante Amitakiyama told me that he was going to do a sutta called Ariyapariyesanā, and I thought I should do that as well. So that's the sutta that we're going to do today. So the one that he was prepared for. It is a long sutta, and it is really long, but I don't think we're going to need to get through all of it today, especially because it's like many, many pages long, but it is a very important sutta, and it has a lot of reflection that we can do about the sutta. I can share the sutta on the screen, right? Is that okay? I'll just go along with you guys. And also because I don't have a lot of time, so I'll try to see what I can teach within the time period that I have. We're not going to go through absolutely everything because it has like a long introduction. But basically, the Buddha was staying at Jeta's Grove, which is usually where he stays. That's why a lot of the suttas that you hear, they have they have the same setting because he stayed in the same place for a very long time. Um, as in he stayed in Savatthi very often. Um, and it's a very interesting little setting that went here. But basically, a person, a few monks actually went up to Venerable Ananda, who is the monk who is very close to the Buddha. He is the assistant of the Buddha, and asked it would be really good to hear some Dhamma from the Buddha because we haven't heard him teach us in a while. And so all this in between is Ananda kind of getting in between the time for for the Buddha to actually start teaching the Dhamma to these monks. And so then they would go from Savatthi to this place called uh, it's a hermitage made by this Brahmin named Ramaka. Okay, these are not really details that you need to memorize or anything, but it's just the setting. And it's a very interesting event that happens right here. Okay, so when the Buddha goes to teach the Dhamma, even though he is the Buddha and all of his disciples are these monks, there was this situation where a bunch of monks, a few monks, were sitting together and talking, but they were talking about the Dhamma, okay? And as they were talking, the Buddha went to the place that they were in. So let's just imagine like a room that's like has a closed door. And the Buddha waited outside for them to stop talking, for them to finish their discussion. Even though what they're talking about is something that the Buddha taught, even though these are the disciples of the Buddha, he respected the discussion of the Dhamma even when he himself is the Buddha. And that's a very interesting uh, moment that we get to see just how respectful the Buddha is of the teaching that he teaches, because he wholeheartedly believes that this is what is something that can help human beings. And so it's really interesting how he stands outside and waits for it. And then he really respectfully clears his throat and knocks at the door. It's a very respectful way to introduce yourself. And then the monks were talking about the Dhamma as the Buddha knew. And the Buddha appreciated that and uh, rejoiced in that. And so this is the setting, okay? And the Buddha starts to teach the Dhamma right here, okay? And this is a very interesting sutta because he explains this. He explains the necessity of practicing the Dhamma through not only the practitioner, but through himself, okay? And that is really interesting because we were kind of put in the same position as the Buddha in some degree. Because the Buddha has, um, even though he has solved his own problems, he was in a position where he hadn't. And so he's putting himself back in the setting where he was not enlightened and simply searching. And he goes down to this question where he asks himself, uh, what is something like what am I doing with my life basically? So it says the word quest here, and but basically it's like what are the things in my life that I am searching for? What am I spending my days doing? What am I chasing after? And he he basically divides these two different searches. Okay, the word pariyesana, which is the name of the sutta, which is search. Okay, and or quest in this, um, and he divides these two questions into something that is an ignoble quest, an ignoble search, or something that is noble. Okay. And it's really interesting the way he thinks and how we should try to apply this to um, what we do with our lives. Okay, so let's start here. It says, when someone who themselves is liable to rebirth seeks what is also reliable to rebirth, them themselves being reliable to growing old, falling sick, dying, experiencing sorrow, experiencing corruption. These are the things that we look for. Okay. So basically, what he's saying is we tend to be somebody that has this dilemma. Okay. This dilemma that we have is we are born into a situation where we have no control over the fact that we are going to grow old. We have no control over the fact that we are going to fall sick. We have no control over the fact that we are going to die. We have no control over the fact that we are going to experience mental pain and experience physical pain and experience all of these negative things that are just accustomed to life, inherent to life. Okay. And as we deal with these problems, as we have to face these problems, we spend the majority of our life chasing for things that are also liable to change, that are also liable to impermanence, that are also liable to um, growing old, falling sick, dying, and things that will cause sorrow and pain for ourselves as well. So not only are we, so what he's saying is, not only are we suffering from these as individuals, but what we search for will inevitably give us those same exact results externally and adding the internal problems that we already had. Now we have both. Does that make sense to everybody? So we're searching. So we have these internal problems that we don't know how to, that we don't have any solutions for. And the things that we're searching for also have these problems, yet um, we search for it anyway. So basically, let me give you an example. Um, let's say um, we enjoy, let's say, cars, okay? And we save up to get a car that we always wanted. That car, what he's saying here is just like how we are liable to death, that car is liable to die, meaning it can crash, it can become totaled, it becomes impermanent. And then just like how we are subject to sickness, that car will have to deal with its own maintenance and problems that will cause it to become function less than it should. And then so in the same way, there's these parallels to what we have as problems in the same thing and the same thing in the things that we search for. So we have these unsolved problems, and we search for things that have these unsolved issues as well. And so what ends up happening is we search for something that is subject to change, subject to suffering, subject to impermanence, and subject to causing us suffering, causing us mental and physical pain. Um, and we search for these things in hope of happiness, but we end up eventually dealing with the sorrows of dealing with the impermanence and the change of those things. So, so what he's saying is, if you're going to search for something and you are searching for something that is subject to change, suffering is inevitable. If you're searching for something that is subject to death, suffering is inevitable. And so I use the example of a car, but the Buddha here uses example as partners, children. This is another word for like they use servants at the time. So basically like uh people that help you like around the house and things, which is really common during those days. And then it says goats and sheeps and chickens and pigs and elephants and things like that, which is basically very common things that people had as wealth that showed their wealth during ancient India, and then obviously things like gold and currency. These are all things that are subject to growing old. These are all things that are subject to falling sick. These are all things that are subject to death. And so by by subject to all of these things, what we need to get like a notion of is the fact that these things are subject to change in a way that we do not want. Okay, so it's not like change in a development way. It's we have a partner and that person changes in a way that we don't want them to. We have children and they change in a way that we don't want them to. We have we have a house and something happens to it in a way that we don't want it to. It's subject to change, and that change is something that we do not desire and therefore will cause suffering. So if what we search for is something that is inevitably going to cause suffering, we end up um, suffering, basically. And so what he's saying is, if you're going to search for these ignoble things, that's the word he uses for it, these ignoble things, you are going to have to uh, deal with the inevitable impermanence of them, and also um, you will have to inevitably suffer because of that impermanence. And so what he's saying is, if you're searching for something that is subject to impermanence, suffering will arise. Okay. And so he says this in a lot of different manners. So growing old, falling sick, death, causing sorrow, being able to be liable to corruption, and all of these things that are basically changed in ways that we do not desire. And um, and so then he finishes that by saying, this is what an ignoble search is. Okay. And then he answers the other question, which is what is, so because he started off by saying there's two types. And so now he's answering the second one. And then he says, when someone who they themselves are subject to all of these problems that we just talked about earlier, they um they search for the supreme sanctuary. So basically, uh, that's kind of a hard definition. I mean, for the translation, but basically, he's searching for nibbana. And the so if you're not familiar with what nibbana is, it's not like a heaven that is in other religions. It is not like the heaven described in in Buddhism. It's it's basically the removing of oneself from this chain reaction of cause and effect, which causes suffering. Okay. So you're getting yourself out of this thing called dependent origination, which is the thing that creates our suffering. Um, uh, it creates all of the suffering that we have ever endured. So Nibbana is not like this perfect little heaven that has like gold and mansions. Nibbana is freedom from all things that create suffering. Okay. And so what he's saying is, if you yourself has these problems, which we all do, then what we should search for is something that is beyond those problems, because just logically, if we search for something that has the same problem that we have, we're never going to find a solution. If you're searching for, if you're impermanent and you're suffering because of impermanence, and by impermanence, I mean old age, sickness, uh, losing things that you don't want to lose, being with things that you don't want to be with, all of these things are suffering. All of these things are suffering caused by impermanence. And if you're already dealing with this problem within yourself, searching for something that will also have that problem causes you suffering. And there's no way of getting around it. What we do with our life is try to delay it as much as possible. But inevitably, when those things change, it causes suffering. So basically, what he's saying is we need to reevaluate what we search for. We need to reevaluate why we search for those things, and actually ask yourself, okay, if I acquire this thing, if I make this acquisition of this thing that I think will cause me happiness, will it actually do that? And that is the question that he's asking himself later on. And so we'll get into that. Um, so he starts to talk about himself. Before he was enlightened, I too was liable of these things, liable of old age, sickness, death, rebirth, and all of these things. And then it occurred to me, why am I seeking? This is the really important part. Why do I, if I'm liable to rebirth, old age, sickness, sorrow, suffering, and corruption, seek things of the same nature? This is the most important part. This is what you need to get out of this sutta. Um, and this, I'm just gonna give you a little setting reminder here. The person who's thinking like this is a prince of India. Okay? So this isn't some peasant or like some person who has a really horrible life and thinking about like, oh, why would I deal with this stuff anyway? This is a prince that has no chores, no problems, um, no issues, honestly, when it comes to, juxtaposed to our lives. He was a person who was born beautiful, with a beautiful body, born into royalty. He married the most beautiful woman in all of India, and he had a beautiful son. And there was, from our standpoint, he has the perfect little social media life that we want to see. He has absolutely everything. He has the best type of chariots or the best type of, just at the time, everything that you would ever need, he has. And he was physically, there was nothing wrong with him. And so this person, remember the context of it. This is the type of person who's thinking about this. And so just think of how just um beyond normal ways of thinking he is. And also, it also makes you think, if a person that has so much, if a person that has ideally everything we want, still wondering about suffering, then is there really a end to, is there really like an actual position that we can ever go to where we're satisfied? And I think the answer must be no, because if he wasn't there, then we're definitely not getting there. Does that make sense? Because um, he just had absolutely everything. So basically, when we look for something that will give us happiness, we think, okay, maybe if I have a perfect family with my perfect children, with my perfect wife or perfect husband, and I have a perfect income and I have no financial problems and I have all of these things, I will manage to be happy. And we see a destination when we think about it. We think, okay, if I just had this, this would be enough. All I want is this. All I ever wanted, we say that a lot. All I ever wanted is so and so, this and that. And we never get to a place of satisfaction when it comes to pleasing yourself through the sensual pleasures, which is basically what we were talking about. Um, and and we've never really even got to ever hearing about somebody that has everything that we want, you know? Like if you take the richest person on earth right now, that person still has their own health issues, family issues, um, and just a lot of different problems on their own. So we like to cherry pick like, okay, I'll take this person's financial situation and I'll take this person's health and that would be perfect, and I'll take this person's relationship status, that will be perfect. And we make this thing hoping that maybe one day we'll reach that. And if we do, we will be happy. But now we have this perfect example of somebody who literally had that. The Buddha wasn't dealing with any type of relationship problems. The Buddha didn't have children problems. The Buddha didn't, I mean, the Buddha by, I mean, before he was enlightened, okay? Um, so the Bodhisattva, when he was a prince, he didn't have any of those types of problems. So when we're talking about the ideal lifestyle, he was the closest thing to it. And he still found suffering in his life. Suffering meaning there's never, ever, ever going to be a point of satisfaction, permanent satisfaction, lasting satisfaction through searching for things like this. Um, because they are all subject to change. Okay. And therefore, if you search for things, even though how perfect they are right now, if they're all subject to these things, these issues, then suffering is inevitable. Okay. And the only way to get out of this dilemma, so okay, we can talk about that all day, but what can we possibly do about it? And that is where he gets to the point where he searches for enlightenment, basically. This is a very hard way of understanding it, but basically searching for enlightenment, searching for something free from rebirth, old age, sickness, etc. Okay. And um, then he explains how he leaves his life and goes into the homelessness, which is more evidence of what I just said for the fact that he was thinking all of these things as a prince, not as a person who's left their life into like homelessness and being a monk. So those thoughts that he had were before that situation. Um, and so he goes and meets a few teachers, and there's two teachers, both of them are the same uh like situation. I'll tell you about one of them. It's really interesting because it's so amazing how the Buddha is so narrow-minded because we get so caught up on the details of things that we forget why we do things in the first place. Um, like we can get into, let's say, an occupations thinking, like let's say somebody wants to be a doctor because they genuinely want to help people. And they get to that position and they kind of forget what they came there for. What they came there for is, I came here to help others. But then they get caught up on all of the, problems that come with being a doctor. Like, oh, am I getting paid enough? Am I this? Am I that? Am I respected enough in my job? And then we get through all of these dilemmas that we have and we forget why we're there in the first place. But something amazing that the Buddha has is he didn't get caught up in anything like that. And so he went searching for somebody who maybe might have the answer, and he meets this person called Alara Kalama. Okay. And this person named Alara Kalama, he is basically like an ascetic who has meditated very well and developed his mind very well. And he has students who he teaches really well. Okay. Just to give you a background. And he quickly memorized basically everything, the Bodhisattva. And he was able to recite absolutely everything of the teacher. And he even got into the same levels of meditation of that teacher within a very short period of time. Okay. And um and so this is kind of like a detail that you might not be familiar with, but basically he says this Alada Kalam person says the the highest that I can go through in meditation is this thing called the dimension of nothingness, which is a very, very high level of meditation. Um, and the Buddha says, and so the Bodhisattva, while he's there, he's searching for something that is beyond death. He's searching for something that is free from suffering. Okay. Then he thinks to himself, it's not just him who can do this. I can do this too. And and he puts faith into himself and realizes that he can do it, and he makes an effort, okay? And he realizes basically everything, absolutely everything that his teacher has taught. And his teacher is really happy to hear that. And he says, okay, me and you both should now teach these students. And um, he thinks to himself, this teaching that he has now completely fulfilled, okay, completely went and just absolutely did every single thing that he needed to do within that teaching. And he thinks, this teaching doesn't lead to the dissipation and cessation that I'm looking for. It's not leading to the peace and insight that I'm looking for. It's not leading to this extinguishment. And extinguishment is a really good word for this, because he's looking for complete freedom from all of the suffering. Okay. And he says, this teaching that I'm practicing is only just going to lead to me being reborn into a world where I am, practicing this meditation further and further. And this is not what he wants. And that's so interesting, because a lot of people, I think, will search for the right thing, meet these obstacles, and stop right here. They will come to the point where they are searching for something. They'll get to a position of power maybe, and then because of their desire to keep that position of power, they will stop right there. Okay, but the Buddha doesn't. And it's really amazing how he does that. Okay. And so the second person is basically the same exact situation, but he has an even higher level of meditation. And the Buddha reaches that exact same level of meditation, and he realizes this is just going to make me be reborn in some other even higher destination, which I don't want, because he doesn't want to be reborn, because he knows that birth will lead to death, and death is suffering. Death has age. Death has, losing your loved ones. Death has all of these problems. So he knows this isn't what I want. And so he lets go of basically all of these teachers who think they have the answer, but they don't have the answer to what he is looking for. So we definitely can't do exactly what the Buddha is doing right here, but we really need to get that question down. Okay. So the question that we need to always ask ourselves is, what, or not what, but why am I doing what I'm doing? Okay. Why am I spending my energy, spending my time looking for what I'm looking for? Why am I, and that's a very broad question, but it's a very important one, and you can answer it through anything. Okay. So let's say you're really focused on your work right now, and you're really focused on attaining my money, okay, financially, becoming financially at some level that you're searching for. Okay, this is just one example. Um, and so if you ask yourself, okay, why am I doing this in the first place? Is it because I feel socially obligated? Is it because I feel like um, I need to I need to have financial affluence in order to be accepted in the way that I want to be? Is it like what are these underlying push factors that I have that is pushing me towards these goals that I've made for myself? And when you really break those things down, we're really just looking for, and I don't want you to just answer this because I'm answering it. I would rather you think about this yourself. But we're just trying to be happy at the end of the day. We're searching for something, whether it be social acceptance, whether it be like a financial stability, whether it be something in our family lives. We're searching for happiness. Okay. We're searching for happiness that we can be satisfied with. Satisfaction through happiness that we think will continue. And unfortunately, the places that we search for this happiness in are places that are subject to the same types of change that we know will inevitably cause suffering. Okay? And when you look at life like that, that's not trying to be pessimistic, like, oh, everything is horrible. Why am I doing anything anyway? It's you're just reflecting, is the things that I'm doing going to actually lead to the happiness that I'm looking forward to? Okay. And the answer to that eventually you're going to come to is no, it's not. Because these things are subject to change. And when they change, it will cause me suffering. So it's not. But some of these things, obviously, we can't avoid. You can't just be like, okay, well, money causes me to do or buy things that are impermanent and therefore will cause me suffering. So therefore, I'm just going to quit my job right now. That doesn't really make sense. We can't really do that. Okay. So the answer isn't quit your job and leave your family and do like any type of weird feeling that you have from thinking about this in this way. It doesn't mean to go be spontaneous. It means when you realize the things that you're searching for will only cause a limited amount of happiness and they are all subject to change, you can kind of have an acceptance with that. Okay. And when you come to that acceptance, through your own understanding, through your own search of these questions, when you come to the understanding and acceptance of it, when those things eventually change, you're not surprised. You're not surprised and you're not as attached because you knew that those things were subject to change. Because as you know through your own experience in life, the people who suffer the most mentally are people who are not ready for the changes in their life. Okay. And I'm not just saying people as an externally, when we are like that, because we are like that at sometimes not. When we're the most vulnerable to not understanding and the lack of understanding um, of this natural phenomena, we end up suffering a lot. So in order to reduce that suffering, we need to come to an understanding that the Buddha has come to here, which is differentiating this permanent, everlasting happiness that we're looking for, and understanding that we're not going to find it in the things that we are looking for currently, and lowering those expectations to, okay, I know that when I get this thing, I know that when I meet this person, I know when I associate with this human being, this relationship, this person, this collection of elements is subject to change. And because of that, understanding that when I associate with this person, when I associate with this thing, when it changes, I won't be so surprised. I won't be so attached that I break down. And that will really, really, really help you in life because if you think about it, all we have is attachments. We have so much of a variety of them that they're all definitely subject to change. It's just statistically true. You can't have um, 50 friends and expect all of them to be perfectly in line with every single word that you say, every single moment of the day. Things are going to happen. And so just statistically, it's naturally going to change the relationships that we have, the things that we do. And so if we're more prepared mentally by understanding, okay, the things that I'm searching for happiness with are not going to find me that everlasting happiness that I'm searching for, then we can really uh, go back into self-reflection. And then you can search for things that cause you happiness in a way that is less out of your control. Okay. But you can understand here in the answer to this isn't okay, meditation is the answer. Meditation is the key meditation is this thing that you can practice, and when you do meditation, um, you're gonna be like the act of doing so will free you from any type of happiness and get you into that long-lasting happiness that we're looking for, because it's not. Because when you meditate, that ability to meditate is impermanent. Your ability to continue doing so is impermanent. Your ability to have a happiness because of meditation is impermanent. So it's not saying, oh, get your mind out of all of these tangible things and put it onto meditation. It's understand that all of these things, anything that is a formation, anything that has an arising to it has its decline. And when you come to that understanding, you really have a better way of letting go. Okay? And so the Eightfold Path is something of an instrument that we use in order to get into that position. But it's not something to hold on to either. And so this is just an understanding that we need to have of all things that arise. Okay. So we're running out of time. So if anybody has any questions, we can take some questions.
Thank you very much, Bente. That was a very, very good talk. I have a question, like maybe, it helps to also look at the like some perspective, like the teaching, and I have the most respect and I really agree with like, the whole concept, but I think there is some assumption behind. Like you said, Buddha was a very wealthy, person. He didn't have, any worries. He didn't have to worry about his kids, being fed. He didn't have to worry about, his family being, taken care of. They are royalty, yeah. So in the sense that I was thinking, okay, I mean, like not all of us like look for like, status or, money for money, but there are people we like modern life we have to take care of, and it's difficult to find the right balance, yeah. That's one thing. And then when you look at from this, like even I think, I mean, the teaching goes well, like so with some assumption in the like, middle high income country, but in a very poor country, you still have to want to actually get some food, want to get some money. And then, you have the luxury to not want it or being satisfied or content. Yeah. But I feel like maybe there are like some assumptions that need to be pointed out behind. So that's, I don't know what you would think of, say, about those. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So yes, definitely uh the need for food as a physical necessity. Um Especially for someone that doesn't have the luxury of having a meal every day and not being worried about it. There's definitely a difference there. But this isn't saying that you should be unattached to food and so therefore you don't need to eat. And that's why I said earlier, like this doesn't mean from this you don't need to like leave here thinking, okay, I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna stop doing all of these logical things that I'm doing. It means simply like the conclusion that we need to come to is not uh, should I continue doing what I'm doing or should I continue searching for what I'm searching for? It's simply understanding that the things that I am associating with, regardless of luxury or not, um, these things that I'm searching for, these things that I am spending my life on, are all subject to change, and therefore I shouldn't expect that everlasting happiness in those things that are subject to change. Why? Because they are subject to change. And when they change, they cause suffering. Like even it doesn't matter like so like let's say we put it back to the poor person's perspective, where they're just trying to eat in order to survive or something like that. Um, because the requirement of that food is impermanent, um, and it's not sure, like we're not sure if that person will get it or not. Um, Having that expectation that it will be there, that this will satisfy me, is the problem there, not simply searching for food. Because even as a monk, you eat every day, you wear clothes because you need to, and you have these essential things in your life. So it's not about removing clothes, it's not about not eating, it's about being unattached to the things that you have, unattached to the things that you are grasping towards.
Hi, I was wondering how you can kind of take these thoughts within a relationship and how like you can have the idea of like not being too attached because people change, because things change, but not for that idea to not create a wedge or you to still um, be able to be completely connected and present in relationships while still having this kind of idea be in your mind. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, that's a very practical question. Just like the last one. So basically, it's not about it's not about making impermanence into pessimism, and that's something that I really want to distinguish because um, I feel like a lot of people misinterpret what the Buddhist means by jumping into like, oh, everything is impermanent, so why would I do this anyway? Why would I have a relationship if it's impermanent anyway? Why would I have a car if it's impermanent anyway? So it's not about removing yourself from these things. You can love someone, you can care for someone, you can have a deep connection with somebody, but and that there's nothing that should change within that. But if we are not mentally aware of the fact that the things that we are attached to are subject to change, then um, that lack of understanding of the situation deems us vulnerable to when those things change, we suffer greatly because we were simply not prepared mentally for that situation. So it's not about reducing your attachment till you removed your loved ones or something like that. It's um, being it's being loving and being caring, but simply in a way that isn't causing a type of suffering, or a type of attachment that will lead to great suffering. Okay? Because but all changes will lead to some type of suffering. You will deal with it in some way or another because those attachments, because they are attachments, when they change, they will cause suffering. But we can at least mitigate it through wisdom and understanding of the situation. So not letting go, but coming to understanding. Okay? I hope that answers your question.
Sorry, I've been out of these sessions the last 2 weeks, so I promise I'll be really quick. So back to relationships, if you expect something from your partner, like they call you every day, they see you once a week, and then when they don't, you set a boundary saying, I'm not going to talk to you unless you call me at noon every day. Is that an attachment? Like, could you still do that and mitigate your attachment? Because I find myself not always getting what I want and then having a craving from my partner or a friend to act a certain way out of self-respect. And then I may say, okay, I'm going to not attach myself until I see you improving in ways that I need you to.
When we have an expectation of something and we don't get it the way that we want to, it causes suffering. Okay, and I don't need to teach that to you because we all know that, right? It causes this disappointment, which is a mental suffering. And this isn't saying like, okay, let all of the bad things happen, let things crumble, let everything be horrible because they're impermanent anyway. Um, if you need to set boundaries like that in your relationships, in your friendships, those are like, I would think logical things to do. It's but we need to simply be aware of the fact that um getting that in the way that we want, in exactly the time that we want, is not something that we should expect in a way that causes us to suffer from not getting it. So um, the more of those that we have, and I'm not saying like don't logically do so, because when you're in a relationship, there's things that we need to, set boundaries, do things like that. And so continue to do so, but understand that when you're suffering because of those things, when you're suffering from having those expectations and not receiving them, that suffering is caused from attachment, not really the person, not really yourself, but the attachment to the fact that you wanted something to go your certain way and it doesn't. And so a huge part of suffering is simply um, wishing for something and not receiving it. And there's logical things that we must do um, in situations like that, and you should continue to do so. But understand that the higher your expectation that you have of those things being in the way that you want them to be, the more inevitable suffering that you create for yourself. So you kind of have to find like a balance between it.
So set your boundaries and then live, be happy without depending on whether they meet your needs or not. Like, say what you need and then just live your life. Don't say, oh, well, they're not doing this, I'm not going to be happy. Say, okay, I see they're not doing what I need, that doesn't affect my happiness. Correct?
That is very subjective and depends on the situation, right? So I don't think I can give a
Yeah.
clear right answer to that because it really depends on what are you searching for, what are you um ready to deal with, ready to not deal with. So I really can't give an answer for you about that. But um the unnecessary parts of it that we do that just kind of age ourselves and agitate ourselves, those are the things that we really need to get out of. By simply coming through the understanding, and through that understanding, we tend to let those things go. So the more you understand that concept, the more of those little things that you can let go of. And this is something that took the Buddha years to do. Okay. So this isn't something that we need to do right now, like immediately, but just having a deeper understanding will help us get there. So today we gained a lot of merit by learning the Buddhist teachings. We learned about the type of questions that we need to ask ourselves, how we can apply impermanence to our life practically, how we can navigate through our life while applying the Buddhist teacher, but while applying the teachings of the Buddha to our life, and with all the merit that we gain today by practicing and learning the Dhamma, we share all this merit. With all of the monks who taught us this Dhamma, we share this merit with our teacher, Pingot Lokaswaminatse. We share this merit with Pingot Amitakema Swaminatse, who brought us this opportunity. And we share all of this merit with all of the volunteers in this program. May everybody be happy, healthy, and well. We share all this merit with all of the people who joined this program today, searching for, the Buddha's teachings, searching for meaning in their life. And so we share all this merit with all of you. May all of you be happy, healthy, and well. May all of you be blessed by the Triple Gem. And may you all develop in concentration, develop in virtue, develop in wisdom. And may you all be happy, healthy, and well. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.